Hello, this one is The Well of the World's End by Elizabeth Grierson. There was once an old widow woman who lived in a little cottage with her only daughter, who was such a bonny lassie that everyone liked to look at her. One day the old woman took a notion into her head to bake a girdle of cakes. So she took down her baking board and went to the meal chest and fetched a basin full of meal. But when she went to seek a jug of water to mix the meal with, she found that there was none in the house. So she called her daughter, who was in the garden, and when the girl came, she held out the empty jug to her, saying, "Run like a good lassie to the well of the world's end, and bring me a jug of water. For I have long found that the water from the well of the world's end makes the best cakes." So the lassie took the jug and set it out on her errand. Now, as its name shows, it's a long road that well many a weary mile had the poor maid to go ere she reached it. But she arrived there at last, and what was her disappointment to find it dry. She was so tired and so vexed that she sat down beside it and began to cry, for she did not know where to get any more water, and she felt that she could not go back to her mother with an empty jug. While she was crying, a nice yellow paddock with very bright eyes came jumping over the stones of the well and squatted down at her feet, looking up at her face. "And why are you crying, my bonny maid?" he asked. "Is there anything I can do to help you?" "I'm crying because the well is empty," she answered, "and I cannot get any water to carry home to mother." "Listen," said the paddock softly, "I can get you water in plenty, if you'll promise to be my wife." Now the lassie had but one thought in her head, and that was to get the water for her mother's oatcakes, and she never for a moment thought that the paddock was serious. So she promised gladly enough to be his wife, if he would just get her a jug of water. No sooner had the words passed her lips than the beastie jumped down the mouth of the well, and in another moment it was filled to the brim with water. The lassie filled her jug and carried it home, without troubling any more about the matter. But later that night, just as her mother and she were going to bed, something came with a faint thud, thud against the cottage door, and then they heard a tiny little voice singing, "Oh, happy, open the door, my hinny, my heart. Oh, open the door, my ain true love. Remember the promise that you made, down in the meadow where we two met." "Whisht," said the old woman, raising her head. "What noise is that at the door?" "Oh," said the daughter, who was feeling rather frightened, "it's only a yellow paddock." "Poor bit beastie," said the kind-hearted old mother. "Open the door and let him in. It's cold, work sitting on the doorstep." So the lassie, very unwillingly, opened the door, and the paddock came jumping across the kitchen and sat down at the fireside. And while he sat there, he began to sing this song. "Oh, gie me my supper, my hinny, my heart. Oh, gie me my supper, my ain true love. Remember the promise that you and I made, down in the meadow where we two met." "Gie the poor beastie supper," said the old woman. "He's an uncommon paddock that can sing like that." "Tut," replied the daughter crossly, for she was growing more and more frightened as she saw the creature's bright black eyes fixed on her. "I'm not going to be so silly as to feed a wet sticky paddock." "Don't be ill-natured and cruel," said the mother. "Who knows how far the little beastie has travelled, and I warrant that he would like a saucer of milk." Now the lassie could have told her that the paddock had travelled from the well of the world's end, but she held her tongue and went into the pantry and brought back a saucer full of milk, which she set down before the strange little visitor. "Now chap off my head, my hinny, my heart. Now chap off my head, my ain true love. Remember the promise that you made, down in the meadow where we two met." "Hout havers, pay no heed, the creature's daft," explained the old woman, running forward to stop her daughter, who was raising the axe to chop off the paddock's head. But she was too late. Down came the axe, off went the head, and lo and behold, on the spot where the little creature had sat, stood the handsomest young prince that had ever been seen. He wore such a noble air, was so richly dressed, that the astonished girl and her mother would have fallen on their knees before him had he not prevented them by a movement of his hand. "It is I that should kneel to you, sweetheart," he said, turning to the blushing girl, "for you have delivered me from a fearful spell, which was cast over me in my infancy by a wicked fairy who at the same time slew my father. For long years I have lived in that well, the well of the world's end, waiting for a maiden to appear who should take pity on me, even in my loathsome disguise, and promise to be my wife, a maiden who would also the kindness to let me into her house, and the courage at my bidding to cut off my head. Now can I return and claim my father's kingdom. You must, gracious maiden, will go with me and be my bride if you will have me." And this was how the lassie who went to fetch the water from the well of the world's end became a princess.